see nothing. Oh, there you go. That's live.
Well, we're gonna go with this. Welcome to a new edition of Education is Best Medicine. It's the 17th, and I'm George Pearson. I'm a PA, I'm a physician's assistant. I've been practicing for about 35 years, and again, I want to welcome you into a new edition of Education is Best Medicine, hosted by Eyes of the Conscious Soul. I want to thank the RTV staff and Curtis for just being here to support. And we had a meeting this morning. It looks really great about the future of the TV / radio / a whole bunch of other stuff going on. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for tuning in and comments and on Facebook. And if you're running through Facebook, make sure you check the page out and check out some of the events. We've got Juneteenth coming up next week in Oakland for it's the 14th, I believe. Juneteenth, hosted by Eyes Conscious Soul, Miss Howard's production. And there's going to be a real strong week of activities going on, so please check us out. Well, I wanted to dedicate this show, and I wanted to dedicate the show to all the mothers, past, present, and future, who have struggled to bring a child into the world, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And particularly those women that suffer under this weight of structural and institutional racism. I was reviewing an article by The Hill, and David Axelrod interviewed ex-President Obama, and he asked about basically racism. And it was kind of interesting because I always thought that the whole idea behind President Obama and the presidency for him was a point that we had arrived. There was no longer a discussion around racism, and we were all going to get along together in this great, big, America. Well, when ex-President Obama was asked about this discussion on racism, he put it in the context of Mr. Scott, who was an African-American male Republican running for president. And he's single, and he did support the reversal of Roe versus Wade. And again, he's the only black candidate in the GOP presidential primary pool. And when he was asked specifically, again, this is a comment from The Hill, about his message on race, the former president said that while he was not trying to criticize Scott individually, there's sometimes a tendency among Republican candidates to gloss over lingering effects of centuries of racism instead of validating and saying everything is great and how come everybody can't make it. And this is under the context of affirmative action and some of the discussions around, how do we right the wrong of 300 years of chattel slavery? Did anything really happen to those Africans that came here in 1619? Is the American story a story of the building of America as well as the building of this institution called slavery, or do we negate that and just say that America got built by itself? Well, I'm putting this in context because I'm 67 years old, getting ready to turn 68. My mother had me on July the 4th, 1955, so I have a birthday coming up. And the pregnancy, as well as my birth, was very rough. I never knew that before. She almost died. And when we were always out together, and she would come to some of the events that I would do, And I introduced my mom, and she said, that boy almost killed me. And I didn't know how close she was to the truth. And so, in the context of this past week, and listening to some of these discussions, the death of this young, vibrant, healthy African American athlete, and it's disconcerting because she did not and should not have died. Her name is Tori Bowie. I want to always say her name. In 2021, and put this also in context, in 2021, the maternal mortality rate for non-Hispanic Black, subsequently Black women / African American women was 69.9 deaths per 100,000 births, 2.6 times the rate of non-Hispanic whites. So, in other words, to put it simply, Black women died in childbirth twice as much as their white female counterpart. The rates for Black women were significantly higher than the rates for white and Hispanic women. So we talk about, again, specifically, not just Black, but African American women born in 1619. And so it got me to thinking. Says, and as we had continued, I continued to have this discussion around African American women, particularly women of color. My concern that the women of color, particularly women of color culture, tend to be portrayed as super women. And how does it relate to the birthing of a child, the caring of a child, the protection of that child as he or she grows, and the effect on them physically, mentally, and spiritually. I think this is again one of the ongoing issues around racism, institutional racism, structural social racism, and also it's the question around clinical inertia, and cognitive bias. And also a discussion around providers that tend to offer and should offer the best treatment, but don't sometimes always do. And for me, it's understanding that I'm asking for African American care because the structure of white care has been killing a lot of us. And it's structured to be that way. Again, it follows with our theme of talking about the JAMA article and the fact that just African American folk die younger, they die quicker, and they die needlessly. And we lose capital on that. Well, and because I'm not having the understanding, I need to evaluate this and whether there's blood pressure or diabetes. Some of the things they're saying is not treated, and I'm saying that the discussions around harmful effects of heart disease and heart attack and stroke, and some of these discussions lend themselves to poor control. And I want to bring this perspective to a non-OBPA provider. I want to kind of define some terms first, because maternal mortality just didn't start. And I think it's laughable now that after I've been practicing almost 35 years, we're still number one in Black women dying from childbirth, in childbirth, and after childbirth. That's scary. So I mentioned cognitive bias and clinical inertia. And I asked GPT chat, was there any association? And this is what it says. That cognitive bias and clinical inertia or concepts are related to decision making and behavior in the field of medicine, but they are distinct in nature and not directly associated with each other. Let's define each term separately. Cognitive bias refers to the systemic errors or deviations in thinking and decision-making process that can occur due to various factors, including individual cognitive process, how we think, Her 6, external influences. Cognitive bias can affect how information is perceived, processed, and interpreted, leading to subjective judgments and decisions that may deviate from rational or objective analysis. In other words, if I'm seeing you in a clinical setting, for some reason, your race, who you are, or your sex or your gender makes you less desirable to be treated and less worthy of the assessment that might save your life. The minimization of your care. And I'm bringing these up because we're going to draw a line in the time that we have to maternal mortality. These biases can influence medical professionals' diagnostic reasoning, treatment choices, and patient management. Examples of cognitive bias in medicine include confirmation bias, availability bias, anchoring bias, and overconfidence bias. So when you talk to Africans in America about when they go to their provider and they see them, they feel disrespected. They feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they're being rushed. They feel like they're just being told to take medicines. Then that's what we're talking about. Remember, my subject today is maternal death, the mother dying in childbirth, maternal mortality. So I want you to draw a picture of a mother coming in, African American mother coming in, newly pregnant, showing in her first trimester. And I want to kind of go through the complexities just a little bit about bringing a child to term, what that means for a woman that has to do it and chooses to do it, or is forced to do it because she doesn't have any options. Clinical inertia. So we talked about cognitive biases, now we talk about clinical inertia. It refers to the phenomena observed in healthcare settings where medical professionals fail to initiate or intensify treatment even when it's necessary based on the patient's clinical condition. It occurs when there is a gap between recommendation guidelines or evidence-based medicine and an actual clinical practice. I'm going to read that again because I think that's really important. Clinical inertia can be stemmed from various factors such as therapeutic inertia, hesitation to initiate treatment, diagnostic inertia, failure to pursue predictive treatments. Clinical inertia can lead to suboptimal patient outcomes, delayed or inadequate treatment, and increased disease burden. And again, the context is a mother newly pregnated and wanting to carry the child to term. Either one of these concepts, if practiced for over 300 years, dooms that pregnancy and that mother to failure. And it's amazing that they survived the process. Tori Bowie, I want you to remember her name. She's an Olympic athlete who died 8 months. And again, she's an Olympic athlete. In fact, 3 other members on that Olympic team, relay team, also had pregnancy problems, including a young woman who had what's called preeclampsia or hypertension during her pregnancy. Again, these are Olympic athletes. So, why is this such a complex process? So I asked ChatGPT to talk to me about pregnancy. It said a normal term pregnancy usually lasts about 40 weeks and is divided into 3 trimesters. The overview is a course of a normal term pregnancy. So when you ask men, could they function for 40 weeks and carry this fetus and have it growing in their body, continue to change them emotionally, psychologically, physically? If men had to carry a child and a woman in their present bodies, it would kill them. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Our bodies can't support the physiology, the hormones, the nutrition drain on a male body. So by the pure definition, a man can't carry a child. So there's 3 trimesters. The first trimester, the eggs fertilize, implants to the uterine wall, and begins to develop the embryo. Organ systems and body structures start to form. Common symptoms include for the woman missed periods, fatigue, breast tenderness, morning sickness, nausea, and vomiting. Common. Increased urination. And in the first trimester, which I thought is interesting, that's the highest risk for miscarriage. But we see women of color having problems throughout their pregnancy and later in their pregnancy. Although the first trimester is the greatest risk of miscarriage for a woman of color, carrying a child risked her death throughout the entire pregnancy and even after delivery. The second trimester is week 13 to 27. The baby's organs start to develop and movement becomes more noticeable. The kick, right? The mother's abdomen begins to expand as the baby grows. Morning sickness usually subsides, and the mother may experience increasing energy levels. The mother may undergo prenatal screenings for genetic diseases, things like Tay-Sachs, sickle cell, a number of diseases screened in that second trimester. This is why good prenatal care is so important, because at every point that mother needs to be evaluated. And if she's not evaluated, we tend to run the risk of her losing that pregnancy. So those that want to really believe in right to life issues and really want to push this force of women to have children, then you better be able to support them with the care that they need to bring the child to term, or you risk the mother dying in childbirth. And no one's talking about that. The in the second trimester, the mother may undergo prenatal screenings for genetic disorders. Common symptoms include backache, stretch marks, and skin pigmentation. And just on the side, some mild body dysmorphia. They don't look like themselves. They don't look like the little cute, sexy package that got pregnant in the first place. And that's some issues with depression and mood disorder, because we don't do a good job of supporting women as they make this change in themselves physically. Understand this is a natural part of the pregnancy. Is her physical outward change, and how do we support that? Yes, maternal clothing, but understanding that this happens, and to be kind of more cognizant of it and more understanding and empathetic toward it. The third trimester, 1, 2, 3, man, gets there quick. And I'll share a story with you now that I am being blessed in my career to follow a young female who is in the second trimester, and I'm really excited about that. And so third trimester, body gains more weight and grows rapidly. Again, it's body dysmorphia. Gee, I don't look like myself. I'm just big and my legs are swelling and all that kind of thing. And so at that point, they really do need support. The mother may experience increased discomfort due to the baby's size and pressure on the internal organs. Braxton Hicks contractions, which is those practice contractions, may occur. The false contractions, they call them. The baby settles into the head down position because the natural delivery state of the baby, and it's a really, I think the baby rotates to a position where the head is forcing into the pelvis, and then at the time of the termination of the birth, then the child moves down the canal and out of the mother and to the world. And I just thought I'd kind of run some other discussions because we just think pregnancy is just easy. And we look at these women, oh, they're cute and just wonderful. Well, shoot, pregnancy is kind of like you can die in pregnancy. It says one of the issues is gestational diabetes, preeclampsia or blood pressure, preterm labor, changes in the placenta, either a condition where it'll cover the cervix and you have to move it out, or it just comes, it just separates from the wall. These are uh, emergencies for all nations, and this is why monitoring is most important. And one of the other discussions around pregnancy is mental health. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, and prenatal and postnatal depression, as well as anxiety, and even some concerns in terms of psychosis. So for 40 weeks, a woman is at the height of excitement to the depths of despair, all in bringing a child to term. So it's not something to take lightly. And again, they do a lot of screening in the second trimester, common stuff like Down syndrome, Edward syndrome, Todd syndrome. It's a chromosome. All these are chromosomal defects. That's why they have to be screened. Sickle cell, bleeding disorders like hemophilia, muscular just freaking picked up. Again, it's an issue. And so some of the discussions around maternal mortality are, and it's system wide. And I reviewed this piece, and it said learn more about factors driving the U.S. maternal health crisis. And they noted provider shortages, a lack of insurance, chronic conditions, underuse of evidence-based practice. That surprised me. We're supposed to be science-based and evidence-based, and one of the most important clinical endeavors, I think, Western medicine is the bringing of a child into the world, a healthy child into the world. At least in this particular instance, there's an underuse of evidence-based practices. There's, of course, racial and social economic disparities and lack of comprehensive coordinated care, disrespectful treatment, inadequate postpartum support, and lack of mental health support. So a number of things are going on that could probably put even the most educated and financially stable woman of color at risk, because it's a process unknown to her. So I took some of these out, I wanted to go into them because it was kind of made sense to me. One of the concerns that was raised was disrespectful treatment. It says too often women report being ignored, belittled, or pressured by their care providers. In U.S., women have been reported a range of disrespectful, coercive, and abusive behaviors in cases related to pregnancy and childbirth. Women report that they have been ignored, shouted at, or threatened, including with coercion or withheld treatment, or we're calling child protective services, and their physical privacy violated. More rarely experienced was a physical abuse, a disturbing number of cases have documented where women with life-threatening complications knew something was wrong, but their request for help went unheeded. The midwifery waddle, the doula, support model, which is kind of like when we're and patient-centered care models of care emphasize the value of respect, equitable treatment, and engage birthing people as an active participants in their care. And engaging birthing people as active participants in their care. Shared decision making, patient-centered care. And I want to thank Ms. Crenshaw, who is going to be appearing at the Berkeley Juneteenth, speaking about healthcare, as well as the comprehensive uh, combination medical center, which include medical and psychiatric services, and speaks to Africans in a direct way, particularly as it relates to racism, sexism, and classism, and lack of care. Again, we see this as a whole discussion about changing the paradigm in care, because insanity says that I continue to do something for 30 odd years and call it, and when it doesn't work, I get upset at the person, not at what I'm doing. Inadequate postpartum treatment. So we're just talking about after this, just the whole range of issues. But there's inadequate postpartum treatment. More than half of maternal deaths occur during postpartum period, when complications to physical and mental health can develop or existing ones may become exacerbated. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Definitely this relates to maternal child health. And I'm in primary care, and I do family practice. I work at an adult medicine clinic, but I had to get involved and have had a number of women coming in who are pregnant that you have to serve. You have to find out what's going on. You have to ask somebody. You have to do some more reading. You just can't say she's going to be all right. In one particular case, I'm having the client alternate with me and their advanced OBGYN high-risk pregnancy team. And we're getting a real good benefit. The pregnancy is progressing nicely, and I'm really excited because, again, maybe my visit catches the blood in the urine, or the elevated blood pressure, or they're just not feeling good, or maybe depressed and just needs to talk. I think we have to have a hands-on approach and a more close view of women that are pregnant in order that they can have quality of life issues addressed. Here's the one that got me: underuse of evidence-based practices. This is in the U.S. Evidence-based low-risk models of care are underutilized, while high-risk interventions are used too often. And when high-risk interventions are used, I guess C-section could be thought about that. Then when there's complications, long-term complications, then we go like, wow, what's wrong? Why do women don't want to have children anymore? So, to make a point, the United States national C-section rate is nearly 1/3, 32.21%, while C-sections can be life-saving. The WHO have found that C-section rates higher than 10% do not offer benefit to mothers or babies. In addition to C-section, overuse procedures include inducing labor early, requiring women to stay in bed, restricting food and drink, because all medical procedures come with risks as well as benefits. Procedures should not be used for the convenience of maternity care providers or facilities, and should always be performed with the mother's consent. Patient-centered care, shared decision-making. Many hospitals and providers practice are committing to improving maternal health care by revising practice guidelines to prevent unnecessary procedures and support women in labor longer. Additionally, low-risk evidence-based approaches such as midwifery model and doula model, so that's again a form of midwifery, support results in lower rates of interventions such as induction of labor, epidural use, and lead to higher rates of vaginal delivery. So there are answers to this maternal mortality problem. We just need to be investing and engaging. And again, the question is why? Is it that you have to give up some power? Is you have to make staffs more diverse is that you have to really realize it's a problem. I parallel this, and I hate to say it, with policing. If we think the police are doing a good job, and I think they are, but they need to do better because the things that they're doing are not just happening to all the community. It would make sense. It happens to particular sections in the community. That can be black and brown, Native American people, Hispanic people. That's the problem. So another thing they mentioned was racial and social economic disparities. Key. And we're at 30 minutes, and I want to thank Believe Radio and it's a 24-hour inspirational gospel music, and Adamology and Curtis and all the folks that make this Believe Radio possible. Got some new shows coming on. I think this afternoon around 3 o'clock, new young ladies coming on. Going to be having some conversations and has been having some conversations. We look forward and welcome her to the Believe Radio, our TV family, as we move and as they keep it moving. Racial and social economic disparities. Chronic stress and interpersonal racism contribute to I have to say this. When I was talking about racism 25 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, I was considered a racist. I think a lot of my jobs, I think a lot of my ability to navigate through this system had to do with my views about care and culture and race. I think I'm being proven to be right, but at a high cost to my family and to my children. Anyway, racial disparities in maternal mortality and youth have been documented for over 100 years. And I'm going to add a section too, because I did a GPT chat on this whole discussion, and it was kind of interesting. As long as maternal mortality data has been available, so even before this was going on, today significant racial disparities persist. Black and indigenous women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from complications of pregnancy or childbirth. More likely to die from they're 2 to 3 more times likely to die from a complication of pregnancy or childbirth than their white female counterpart. Maternal mortality rates are twice as high for women living in counties with high poverty rates compared with women living in counties with low poverty rates. Isn't that interesting? If you got money, you can get good health care. If you ain't got no money, you can't get good health care. And you're left to the devices of a society that says they want you to have children, but doesn't support that outcome. And then 6 CPS on you. That's not good. Again, discussions around why maternal mortality, particularly in our community, so high is lack of comprehensive coordinated care, disrespectful treatment, inadequate postpartum treatment, lack of mental support. Again, this concerned me in childbirth. It disturbed me also. And what's disturbing? Well, it's not new. This is older than the inception of America in 1619 and our travel to this land. And African American, particularly African American women, this is a continual plea by me that this continues to be a need for us to understand and have an African American health center that needs the medical psychological needs of our community that has been so ravaged by these traumas. The 1619 Project, the reflection of the white paper in California that talks about reparations. And why reparations? Because of the trauma, because of what's happened to us. No other group can name this. This is American-made trauma. Justified. Not South, not North, but American. And I guess, again, back to the story of this young lady, Miss Bowie, that she was on an Olympic gold team, everything lived for, but having problems with her pregnancy. Again, even one of the members had eclampsia. which is hypertension. And the disturbing thing about it to me is that they are high, healthy, high functioning, intelligent. We get access to healthcare and health insurance. So, what's the issue? And women like my mother and women like my grandchild who has passed had so much trouble bringing children into the world safely. I don't think we've heard much about the death of women in pregnancy. That's because it wasn't really covered. It is being covered now, but it wasn't because most of those women were women of color. And a recent report by the National Report on Families and Children denotes a picture that over the last 30 years, I'm very distressed that this paper was written in 2018. It talks about the number of healthcare access disparity problems and just the fact that women of color, particularly African American women of color, again, 1619 Project, die in childbirth. And what's the difference between that and the last 300 years? Not that much. So, maternal mortality. The death of a woman during pregnancy, at delivery, or soon after delivery is a tragedy for her family and for the society as a whole. So, I went back and I asked GPT Chat about, the question I asked is, maternal mortality of African American women in male passages to 1619 and forward, and the long-term effects of mental and physical effects of the African American community in America. This is what GPT Chat said. The Middle Passage refers to the transatlantic journey that enslaved Africans endured during the era of the Atlantic slave trade, which took place in the 16th to the 19th century. It involved forcible transportation of millions of African people across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas, including what is now the United States. During this period, African women faced extreme harsh conditions, including overcrowded and unsanitary slave ship. You know how black women don't like to be dirty. And carrying a baby. Now I know why my mom was so finicky about cleaning up, keeping the house clean. Now I understand that. African American women faced extreme harsh conditions, including overcrowded and unsanitary slave ship, malnutrition, physical abuse, disease, and they forgot to mention sexual abuse, including included the risk of mortality for both mothers and infants. However, it is important to note that the Middle Passage ended before 1619. The year 1619 is significant in American history as it marks the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in the English colony of Virginia. From that point forward, African American community in America continued to face numerous challenges, including high rates of maternal mortality. This is nothing new. This is not new. This is being woke. This is where the blame game comes. It's easy to blame the victim. It's easier to traumatize the victim. Maternal mortality refers to the death of a woman during pregnancy, childbirth, or within 42 days of the termination of pregnancy. Throughout American history, African American women have consistently experienced higher rates of maternal mortality compared to other racial ethnic groups. Multiple factors contribute to this disparity, including socio-economic factors, limited access to quality health care, systemic racism, and implied bias within the healthcare system. That's why these black women have died. Since 1619, they've died. And now it's important. With the reversal of Roe v. Wade, that means you have to have children now. You have to have children? Doesn't sound like a free America to me. The long-term effects of maternal mortality, again, maternal mortality, the death of the mother before, during, or after childbirth. I think it's essential that we continue to define these things. That young track star died before she gave birth. Moreover, maternal mortality refers to the death of a woman during pregnancy, childbirth, or within 42 days of the termination of pregnancy. Throughout American history, African American women have consistently experienced higher rates of maternal mortality compared to racial and ethnic groups. Multiple factors contribute to this disparity, including socioeconomic factors, but not limited to access to quality healthcare, systemic racism, and implied bias within the healthcare system. Implicit bias. Implicit bias, right? Cognitive bias. Clinical inertia. The long-term effects of maternal mortality in the African American community in America are significant. The loss of mothers due to preventable deaths has had a profound impact on families and communities, both mentally and physically and spiritually. It disrupts family structures, leaving children without mothers and spouses without partners. This loss of support can lead to adverse psychological and emotional outcomes such as increased rates of depression, anxiety, trauma within the African American community. The loss of support can lead to the adverse physiological and emotional outcomes such as increased rates of depression, anxiety, trauma within the African American community. And they wonder why we are so crazy. They wonder why we're so angry. We wonder why we use drugs. We wonder why we're the most incarcerated group of folks for a percentage of people. But not as much as white people. Still want white people in jail. I got blowback about that. Go look it up. More about the perpetuation of maternal mortality disparities over generations has broad public health implications. Public health is not public. I love public health, but it's not public. It's where I chose to practice. It's where the need's at. But it's not public. We'll talk about public health one day. It affects overall health of the African American community by contributing to a cycle of poor health outcomes. Maternal mortality is often reflective of underlying health inequities and serves as an indicator of broader challenges faced by African American women in accessing health care. Hey, you got to honor me. You're not honoring women of color. You're not honoring African American women. Because if you did, their care would be paramount. It shouldn't be that because you don't have money, you can't get good prenatal care to support that pregnancy. That's un-American. These challenges extend beyond pregnancy and childbirth, the impact of overall health and the well-being of the community. As our mothers go, so goes the community. What's the difference that I see? Young men were getting shot, now it's young women. What's the difference I see? Young men were really on drugs, now I see young women are. But what's the difference I see? More black women going to college, getting educated. Deion Flanagan, Barbara Howard, your sisters, all the Howard girls getting degrees. I'm kind of that's heavy. Because in the community overall, more women are getting their degrees than men. Therefore, they are going to be the ones that are being hired. Another group of men that have a group of men that don't want to go to work. They don't want to work at McDonald's. They don't want to work at Burger King. They want to work, they don't want to work picking up. They don't want to do that because they believe it's beneath them. And just to kind of put a bow on this, I picked up a Black women's maternal health discussion, multifactorial approach to addressing persistent and dire health disparities. This is done in April 2018. We're now in uh, June of 2023. Nothing new. It's not new. I want people to this is not new. This has been. This is historic. It says Black women in the United States experience unacceptable poor maternal health outcomes, including disproportionately high rates of deaths related to pregnancy or childbirth. But society and health system factors contribute to high rates of poor health outcomes and maternal mortality of Black women who are more likely to experience barriers to obtaining quality care and often face racial barriers. Constantly, you hear that when this particular woman who's just found out she was pregnant, just having a little nausea and vomiting, comes to her provider to be evaluated, and she feels like she wasn't heard. She feels like her and her baby weren't heard. Black women are 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women. Due to racism, sexism, and other systemic barriers that have contributed to income inequality, Black women are typically paid 63 cents for every dollar paid for white, non-Hispanic men. Median wages for Black women in the United States are $36,227 per year, which is $21,000 less than the median wages for white Hispanic men. It's all about the money, not a doggone thing is funny. You gotta have some money in this land of milk and honey. That's a shame. Now you see how this plays out. That if systemically you've been suppressed, education suppressed, where you could live suppressed, what you could make suppressed, and your counterpart, but white, makes 3 times as much, lives 3 times better, with less, then what do you say about that? How could that be fair? Oh, we just are lazy, good for nothing, and we just don't want to work hard like everybody else? Oh, really? Okay. Whatever. Due to racism, sexism, and other systemic barriers that have contributed to the income inequality, these lost wages mean Black women and their families have less money to support themselves and their families and may have to choose between essential resources like housing, childcare, food, and healthcare. Choose, right? These trends are evident for Black women's health outcomes in the use of Medicare compared to white women. Black women are more likely to be uninsured, face greater and this comes from women's health coverage sources and rates of insurance. So this is all documented. This is all evidence-based. We can now document systemic and structural racism issues that prevent this child from coming to term, even in the most well-offered insurances. Black women experience many preventable diseases and chronic health conditions, including diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. When or if Black women choose to become pregnant, these health conditions influence both maternal and infant health care outcomes. That's why it's a management nightmare. Because you didn't have to think about it, but you have to think about it now. And that's the issue. We have less providers now. We have less people that want to take care of us. Not just give us medicine, but take care of us. Because they're not invested in our community. Why should they? So, to improve Black women's maternal health, all is not lost. We got good stuff. To improve Black women's maternal health, we need a multifaceted approach that addresses Black women's health across the lifespan, improves access to health care, addresses social determinants of health, and provides greater economic security vis-a-vis reparations. It has to start somewhere. Because we've been getting, as my dad would say, the short end of the stick for a long time. Black maternal health disparities. Too many black women are dying in pregnancy and childbirth. Black women in the United States are more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth than women of any other race group. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience pregnancy-related death than their white counterparts. Black women are more likely to experience preventable maternal death compared to white women. Preventable, right? You treat the blood pressure, you treat the diabetes, you get in on the pregnancy early, even a year before you ready to get pregnant. If you're gonna get pregnant, you gotta start eating well, you gotta start taking care of yourself. Let's cut out the sugar, let's cut out the salt, let's get some exercise, that kind of thing. Just like anything, like training for a marathon or a half marathon, you gotta train. You gotta be ready to carry that baby to term. Not you can smoke and drink and miss your prenatal appointments, and when there's a sign of issue, you ignore it, like vaginal bleeding. Black women's heightened risk of pregnancy-related death spans income and education level, so it don't matter. It doesn't matter. Black women's heightened risk of pregnancy-related death spans income and education level. It don't matter. This young track star had plenty dollars. She had plenty care. She was looking to have that baby. And it ended up killing her. It didn't kill her. The system did. Her system of care. Oh, she's an athlete. She'll be fine. She can run. She can run and do all these things and put stuff in the basket. It's okay. She's gonna be okay. Okay. Black women experience more maternal health complications than white women. Black women are more likely to experience complications throughout the course of their pregnancies than white women. And that's just a shame. Black women display signs of hypertension during pregnancy, early in pregnancy than white. This condition involves high blood pressure during pregnancy. The signs are there, but you have to be able to screen for them. Black women experience, I didn't know this, physical weathering, meaning their bodies age faster than the white women's due to exposure to chronic stress linked to socioeconomic disadvantage and discrimination over the life course, thus making pregnancy riskier and at an earlier age. That means just the fact of having a child and carrying a child ages a black woman. That's when that black woman said, "I'm so tired of being tired." Maggie Lou Hamer, that's what she meant. She was a victim of a bizarre GYN procedure where they took her uterus. She never recovered from that. Henrietta Lacks died of cervical cancer. Her cells power a biochemical revolution in treatment. The use of her cells. Black serving hospitals provide lower quality maternal care. 75% of black women giving birth at hospitals serve predominantly black populations. Black serving hospitals have higher rates of maternal complications than other hospitals. They also perform worse on 12 or 15 birth outcomes, including elective deliveries, non-elective cesarean sections, and maternal mortality. That's why we need a comprehensive healthcare center that speaks to our needs. The systems that we're going to have been killing us, and they continue to do that. Many black women have a difficult, so not only is it a bad system, many black women have a difficult time assessing the reproductive health care that meets their needs. Access to reproductive health care, which means women plan their families, improve health outcomes for women and children. So understand this bomb of the rollback of Roe versus Wade, the rollback of the ability for women to not only just have an abortion, but they have women's health care services is another reason why black women will die in pregnancy. How come the Republicans aren't talking about that? How come the Supreme Court's not talking about that? That the decision that they made almost assures that a number of black women are going to die. They don't have any ethics anyway, so why would they have any care about black women? Of course, that decision that they made affects more women, poor women of color, than rich women because they can get an abortion. Unintended consequences or intended. Tupac said, he says, I don't understand how a man who can't have a child can tell a woman when to create one. Many black women lack access to quality contraceptive care and counseling. And we got about 5 more minutes to go. I want to thank you for tuning in to Believe Radio. I want to thank my Facebook family. And 10 Sundays Juneteenth over the week. You know, got a lot of facilities on my website, on my Facebook page. I'm sure you can catch on Miss Howard's and hey, check it out. Hey, Juneteenth, right? Took them 2 years to find out the Africans weren't slaves anymore. Justice delayed is justice denied. This is Medicare. Black women were less likely than white or Latino women to receive postpartum contraception. When they did receive it, it was less likely to receive a highly effective method. So they got pregnant again. Policymakers, health professionals, and communities can improve black women's maternal health. And here's some of the ways they can do it. Only 80% of black women of reproductive age have health insurance, and many experience gaps in coverage during their lives. To improve black women's health outcomes, policies should be focused on expanding and maintaining access to care and coverage. Simple as that, right? But when you get the coverage, then you got to find somebody to provide the care in a way that's culturally competent and has you being viewed as a person as opposed to a dollar. Speaking of that, one of the final notes, I want to thank Healthy Black Families in Berkeley for being who they are. And I want to read this little blurb because I want to kind of make it clear that we are under attack. It says there was a reduction in funding for the Healthy Black Family STEP program from $87,000 to $43,000. And the discussion was COVID impacted the city's finances, but equality demanded we support programs that serve our communities and, again, quit marginalizing our communities, Berkeley. That's what I mean. Even when you have a program to help black families in one of the most critical areas, child contraceptives, planning services, it's gutted. And then they say, well, I don't know what is wrong. What happened? Why are these women dying? Provide, and I love this one as we go out, provide patient-centered care that is responsive to the needs of black women. Remember, that's my motto. Shared decision-making and patient-centered care. Provide patient-centered care that is responsive for the needs of black women and should receive health care that is respectful, culturally competent, and safe, and the highest quality of care. Unfortunately, research shows that black women receive a lower quality of care than their white women counterparts. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hey, we're going in on time today. Isn't that great? Please tune in. Please check out the Juneteenth issues. Be careful, be safe out there. Take care of yourself. Love being you. You're good. You're good. Keep it moving. read some, learn some, improve yourself, love on each other, um, be peaceful. Um, if you don't change, you're gonna be changed by the change. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk with you soon.